who does God say we are? There are so many voices telling us lies of who we are that after a while we start to believe them and our identity gets lost in the shuffle. So who are we? Join me as we discover just who God says we are. Hello and welcome to Hebrews 4 Ministries Weekly Inspirations. When is the last time that you stopped to think about the fact that you are God's masterpiece? I bet it's probably been a while. The story of creation tells us that we are God's masterpiece, but that has been under attack for the last 150 years or so. Not because it isn't relevant and not even because it isn't true, but actually because it's life-changing. See, if we evolved from an accident without a purposeful design or a creator, then there's no rhyme or reason for why we are the way we are, and there's no rules either. There's nothing special about us, though, and there's nothing special about the human race. And if we aren't special, then we aren't valuable. And when human life isn't deemed valuable, it opens up a Pandora's box of crimes against humanity, and acts of cruelty become commonplace and really not all that important because, after all, we're just a human. See, when humanity loses its value, murder can be rationalized. Hate crimes start to increase and genocide creeps into our everyday life. But the truth that God designed and made us on purpose, unique and special from all of the rest of creation, that makes us important. If the world is the result of some cosmic happy accident, then there's no need for God. And pretty soon the power of God is replaced with the fairy tale of God in people's minds. But Psalms 33, 6-9 reminds us that God truly did cause all things to come into being. It says, "By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, their starry host by the breath of his mouth. He gathers the waters of the sea into jars. He puts the deep into storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the people of the world revere him. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood firm." The account of creation reminds us that God is in control. The story of the creation of humanity reminds us that we are special and we're on purpose. Now, according to the account of creation found in Genesis, humanity was created last. We can say that God saved the best for last. And perhaps God created mankind last so that we wouldn't be fooled into thinking that God needs our help or that we don't need his help. The fact that we were last means that we needed God. He didn't need us. But then again, maybe he created humanity last because he wanted everything to be perfect for us. He waited until all the details were completed, that the land was fully formed, the trees were providing shade, streams were providing water, food flourished on the land. Perhaps we weren't an afterthought, but rather a guest of honor. See, when God created everything else, he said, "Let there be," and it came into being, showing that God had authority. He commanded, creation responded. But when he gets ready to create mankind, there's a difference. Instead of commanding our appearance, he says, "Let us make man." Now, Matthew Henry commented on the wording of these two phrases, and he wrote, "It should seem as if this were the work he longed to be at, as if he had said, 'Having at last settled the preliminaries, let us now apply ourselves to the business. Let us make man.'" Man was to be a creature different from all that had been hitherto made. Flesh and spirit, heaven and earth must be put together in him, and he must be allied to both worlds. And therefore God himself not only undertakes to make him, but is pleased to express himself as if he called a council to consider of the making of him. We weren't an afterthought. We weren't last because he thought, oh, what the heck, I'll make one more. We were his masterpiece. Proverbs 9:31 tells us that during creation, God was rejoicing in his whole world and delighting in mankind. We were created to be special. His grand finale of all creation. We were created in his image, given all the spiritual characteristics of our Heavenly Father, and given authority over all the rest of creation. Now, I love to garden, and bear with me, it really does apply. Well, I have probably way more flowers in my yard than I need, and every year I carefully collect their seeds, I dry them out, and then eventually I'll plant them exactly where I want them. And I lay them out so that in the very back, up against the fence, I have the hollyhocks. They get about 7 or 8 feet tall. And in front of those, I place the zinnias. They get 4 feet tall. And then in front of those, the marigolds that get about 2 feet tall. And finally in front, I place the pansies that only get about 8 or 10 inches or so. So by the end of the summer, I have this beautiful wave of color that flows up from the brick separating my flower beds back up to my fence. But sometimes a seed lands in the wrong place. Now, I can't allow a large hollyhock. These things have leaves that are, as big as a giant head, and I can't allow one of those flowers to grow up in the midst of my delicate little pansies, because they would overshadow them and just mess up the whole look of things. So they have to be uprooted, and they get treated like a weed because they were an accident. And that's the way Satan wants us to feel. If he can convince the world that humanity is an accidental sprouting of life, the result of a chance meeting under ideal conditions, then we can be uprooted and thrown away like a weed, and hardly no one notices, and no one really cares. But if we know that God doesn't have accidents, he didn't drop some primordial soup and accidentally sprout a man, then we can understand just how beautiful we are intended to be. Wherever we are, that's where God has planted us. And even if we look like a weed right now, one day we'll stand tall, beautifully arrayed with all the fruits of the Spirit. So don't forget, you are God's masterpiece, not a happy accident. Thank you for joining me today. As always, there are more great lessons by a number of wonderful teachers and artists available at Hebrews4ministries.com. I hope you'll join me next week when we talk about how God says we are made to worship. My name is Keegan Harkins, and from all of us here at Hebrews 4 Ministries, have a truly blessed day.